Her daughter laughed. Her grandson rolled his eyes. Her son-in-law poured another drink. Right there, at her own celebration, Martha Linton was called expired stock. She didn't flinch. She adjusted her silverware. By dawn, Melanie, her daughter, Grant, her son-in-law, and Darren, her nephew, would find themselves erased from the house, the will, and the family trust. They thought letting her stay was kindness. They never imagined she owned everything. And when they tried to fight back, the documents didn't scream. They whispered, "You were never in control." Before we begin, may I ask, where in this big, beautiful world are you listening from? It's always a quiet honor to know who's sharing this space. Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. The restaurant sits on the edge of the bay, where the lights of the city flicker like 1,000 stars scattered across a dark sea. The sound of waves kissing the shore feels distant in the low hum of conversation. Inside, the air is thick with the scent of fresh seafood and something else, a tension that seems to swirl around Martha like a cold breeze. The table stretches long, dark wood gleaming under the soft yellow light, as though trying to capture the warm glow of the sunset that's already slipped below the horizon. The sound of silverware clinking, the murmur of nearby tables, and the slight rustling of napkins fill the space. But for Cassie, it all blurs into the background. She takes her seat at the middle of the table, just far enough from her grandmother to be safe, but close enough to feel the weight of her gaze on her back. Martha's sharp eyes scan the room as she settles at the head. Though it's a position of habit, not honor, the way she arranges her napkin, the precision of her movements, the careful folding. Everything about Martha is meticulous, as if the world were a delicate thing that could shatter at any misstep. Melanie leans over to Grant, her voice just low enough to be a whisper, but loud enough for Cassie to catch the edge of it. "She still thinks she matters," Grant laughs, a quiet, amused sound that rumbles in his throat, though his eyes never leave his phone. His fingers flick across the screen with disinterest, as though there's something far more pressing on the other side of the device than the woman sitting at the head of the table. His indifference is a deliberate choice, a soft insult. Cassie's gaze slides over to her grandmother. The briefest of moments, but it's enough. Martha doesn't meet her eyes. She never does. Her expression remains neutral, distant, like she's removed herself from the conversation entirely, except that her presence demands attention, whether anyone wants to give it to her or not. Martha folds her napkin again, methodically. Her movement's a silent rhythm that speaks volumes. Cassie doesn't know why, but the small gesture gnaws at her. It's like Martha's trying to take control of something, anything, in a world that's slipping away from her. And Cassie's heart squeezes for a second, unsure if she feels pity or anger. Maybe both, but the tension remains thick, and Cassie wonders how long it will take for someone to break it. Martha clears her throat, loud enough for everyone to hear, and then places the folded napkin precisely on the edge of the plate. It's a calculated move, the slight sound that draws attention in a room already too quiet. The small noise is a signal, a reminder of the order that Martha believes should exist in the world. Melanie shifts in her seat, the soft clink of her wine glass against the table adding another layer to the moment. Grant's gaze finally lifts from his phone, a half-smile curling on his lips, but his eyes are still distant, as if he's not fully present. Cassie watches the exchange, feeling the weight of something unsaid hanging in the air. She swallows, wondering what exactly her internship celebration is supposed to be. A formality, a celebration, or just a quiet moment for her to disappear behind the veil of the family drama, just like she always has. "Cassie," Martha says, her voice cutting through the conversation like a knife, though there's no malice behind it, only the thin veneer of politeness. "How's the internship going?" Cassie hesitates, her breath catching. It's the kind of question that's almost too casual, too rehearsed, and she wonders if Martha even cares about the answer. Still, she can't help herself. "It's great, I'm learning a lot. I've already had a few big projects." "Good," Martha says, her lips curving into a faint smile. She places her hands flat on the table, eyes narrowing just a little as if she's measuring Cassie's every word, every gesture. Melanie shifts in her chair, the edges of her lips pulling into something almost like disdain. Cassie can feel it, the judgment behind her sister's eyes. The two of them have always been at odds, though it's never clear who holds the greater resentment. Grant finally speaks, a low murmur that is more to Melanie than to anyone else. Guess we should toast to that. He raises his glass, the motion automatic, but the way he holds it, just a little too stiff, makes Cassie feel like an outsider, like she's being thrust into a role she didn't ask for, one she didn't want, and everyone's waiting for her to fit into it. Here's to Cassie, Martha says, lifting her own glass with the same mechanical precision. Her eyes flicker over to Melanie, then to Grant, as if silently gauging the reactions. Then, without missing a beat, she says, "May you remember that there's more to life than work." The words land heavy in the space between them, not an insult, but something cold and cutting. As if Martha's message is a reminder, a subtle warning, that no matter how far Cassie climbs, there's always someone standing at the top, always someone who will decide when enough is enough. Cassie holds her glass, but the weight of it feels like too much. The sharpness of Martha's words lingers in her mind, twisting, turning like a knot she can't untangle. The silence that follows is deafening. The clink of glass against porcelain seems louder than it should be. The walls of the restaurant feel like they're leaning in, pressing down on her chest. And then, just before the conversation can resume its rhythm, Martha leans forward slightly, and in the quietest, most deliberate whisper, she says, "You can't escape what you are, Cassie." The words don't make sense, not at first, but in that moment, Cassie feels the walls of the restaurant shift. A sudden tilt. As if some invisible weight, has shifted, pulling the ground out from under her. And she knows, with an unsettling certainty, that the night is far from over. The house sits at the edge of a small cul-de-sac, its white picket fence now chipped, and the brick exterior weathered by years of seasons unremarked. The light inside the windows is dim, and shadows stretch long across the lawn. From the outside, it's still just a home, a place the family has lived for the last 10 years. But that's the illusion, isn't it? Inside, the air smells faintly of old leather-bound books, cinnamon candles, and something deeper, more hidden. The scent of authority, of control. Martha's hands, with their deliberate precision, smooth over the stack of papers on the kitchen table, a stack they never really bothered to understand. They never cared to look closer, to ask questions. They trusted, perhaps blindly, that everything was fine. But Martha knew. Cassie lingers by the doorframe, watching her grandmother move through the motions. There's no rush, no urgency in the way Martha handles the papers. She moves like she's assembling a puzzle, a slow, calculated process. Her fingers, stained from decades of writing, tap on the corner of the first document. And then, without a glance, she flips it over to the next. She owns the house. The deed, that small scrap of paper, is in her name. Though the family thinks they've done her a favor by letting her stay, thinking she's the one being given a place to live. They never ask why she won't leave, never inquire into the nuances of their so-called generosity. They've never had to. But Martha has had to live with the consequences of their ignorance. Cassie shifts, uncomfortable, unsure of whether to interrupt, to ask what's happening, what Martha is planning. She's never felt the weight of the house as much as she does now. The reality of it sits like a lump in her throat. Her grandmother looks up, catches Cassie's eyes briefly, and then looks back down at the papers. "Not what you thought, huh?" Martha's voice is soft, even gentle, but there's something steely beneath it. The slightest edge. The power she wields so effortlessly. Cassie doesn't answer. She can't. Not when her stomach is turning, her thoughts colliding in a mess of confusion. The door creaks open, and Grant walks in, wiping his hands on his pants, still smelling faintly of mulch and earth. His eyes flick to the papers, then to Martha, and a silent understanding passes between them. An understanding Cassie's never been part of, not until now. "Didn't realize you were still looking through these," Grant mutters, his voice flat, neutral. His nonchalance feels more like avoidance. "Someone has to," Martha replies, her eyes narrowing at the documents. "You've been busy, haven't you?" Grant doesn't respond, just lowers his gaze, his jaw tightening as he leans against the counter. Darren enters next, his boots heavy on the floor as he strides into the room. A shadow crosses his face as he sees the papers spread out before Martha. There's a flicker of something. Anger, maybe, but he controls it quickly, too quick for anyone to notice except for Cassie. He catches her looking, then nods toward the table. "You want to keep it quiet or make it hurt?" Darren asks. His voice gruff and low, a trace of something darker lurking beneath the surface. Martha doesn't flinch. She simply lifts her chin, her gaze unshaken, her posture straight. Quiet is louder. The room falls into a silence thick enough to taste. Cassie wants to speak, to ask what they mean. What's so terrible about a set of papers? But she holds back. It's as though the words are tangled in her throat, a knot she can't quite loosen. Martha turns back to the stack of documents, almost with a quiet amusement in her expression, like she's watching a show unfold in front of her. "You've all been playing at being nice," she murmurs, more to herself than anyone else. "Acting like you're the ones doing the favor, like you helped me." Grant shifts, and for a brief moment, Cassie catches the smallest flicker of guilt in his eyes before he quickly masks it. "I never said that." "But you think it." Martha's words hang in the air, deliberate, accusing. She lets them sit for a moment before continuing. "You've been under the impression that you're the one saving me, haven't you? That it's some kind of arrangement. You give me a place to stay, and What? I show gratitude?" Cassie's eyes widen, her mind racing. Is that what they've all thought? She wants to speak, but the words feel foreign, like she's been kept out of the loop for too long to understand the truth. Martha slides the papers to one side, revealing a final document underneath. It's thick with legal jargon, the words foreign to Cassie, but the bold type at the top reads clearly enough. Deed of ownership. It's a quiet admission, the truth slipping into the room like an intruder, and suddenly everything shifts. For the last decade, the family has been living under the assumption that they're doing Martha a favor, that they've taken her in, given her a place to stay. But what they don't know, what they've never bothered to understand, is that Martha has been the one doing the favor all along. She's been covering the property taxes for the house they all live in. For 10 years, she's paid the bills, the fees, the costs of keeping their lives running. In exchange, she's held onto the deed, her silent leverage. "You think you've helped me," Martha says, and Cassie can hear the quiet venom in her voice now. "But the truth is, I've been helping you, all of you." Grant shifts, uncomfortable, his mouth opening as if to say something, but the words die before they leave his lips. Darren, standing by the door, watches, his expression unreadable, but the tension is thick now, palpable. The air between them is crackling with a new awareness. Cassie's pulse quickens. Her heart hammers in her chest. The house, the papers, the roles they've all been playing. It's all shifting, changing. The walls have tilted, but no one's noticed yet. And Martha, as always, is the one holding all the cards. The morning light filters through the half-drawn curtains, casting soft patterns across the hardwood floors. In the kitchen, the hum of the coffee maker is the only sound breaking the quiet stillness of the house. The scent of freshly brewed coffee hangs in the air, but it doesn't fill the space the way it used to. Today, the silence feels heavier, charged with something they've all been avoiding. Grant stands by the kitchen counter, his fingers tapping absently on the edge of a paper. The envelope in his hand is simple enough, the kind of thing that usually blends into the stack of bills that clutter the table. But this one is different. The print on the top is bold, unmistakable, past due notice. He flips it open, scanning the letter, brow furrowing. Property taxes. The house. Their house. He feels his pulse quicken. This can't be right. "Mel," he calls out, his voice rising with confusion. Melanie, fresh from the shower, walks in wrapped in a towel, her expression tired but alert. "What's wrong?" He hands her the letter, watching her take it with a slow, deliberate motion. She reads it, her eyes narrowing with each line. When she's finished, she doesn't say anything for a long moment. She looks up, her face blank. "This is a joke, right?" she mutters, more to herself than to Grant. She exhales through her nose and grabs her phone, swiping it open with rapid fingers. "What the hell does it mean?" Grant asks, his voice sharp now, his frustration creeping into his tone. Let me call the city, she replies, dialing a number without hesitation. The phone rings twice before someone picks up on the other end. A pause. Then, Melanie's voice, smooth but demanding, slides into the conversation. Hi, yes, I'm calling about the property taxes for 1253 Hillview Drive. I need to confirm who the owner of record is. Grant watches her, his gaze fixed on her face, and for a split second, he wonders what's running through her mind. The phone call stretches out longer than he expects, and as the minutes pass, his thoughts spiral further. Melanie's fingers drum on the countertop, her eyes darting to the window as she waits. Then her face stiffens. She listens intently, her gaze sharpening. Okay, and that's confirmed. Martha Linton? No one else listed? And the property taxes are due? Her voice trails off as she receives an answer. She nods, though the motion is tense, almost robotic. Thanks, she says, hanging up without a word to Grant. He steps forward, his hands trembling as he takes a breath. What did they say? The house is still in her name. Melanie's voice is low, barely audible, as if she's trying to process the reality of what that means. It's all hers, and the taxes are due, not some mistake. Wait, Grant says, his chest tight with disbelief. He leans against the counter, shaking his head. So you're telling me, we've been living here, thinking we had control? And now we have to pay her taxes? Before Melanie can answer, her phone rings again, and she glances at the screen. It's Grandma, she mutters under her breath, her fingers tightening on the phone. She answers quickly, the words coming out sharp. What do you mean you're not answering? I need to speak with you. There's a moment of silence as Martha's voice reaches them on the other side, but it's distant, unreadable. She's not picking up, Melanie mutters, frustration rising in her tone. I've been calling all morning. Grant shakes his head again. She's doing this on purpose, right? Yeah, she's doing this on purpose, Melanie confirms, her face twisted with something that might be rage or resignation, or both. Across the room, Cassie watches them from the doorway, standing silent and still. She hasn't spoken a word, hasn't moved from her spot, but everything in her is buzzing with the weight of what's unraveling around them. The walls of the house seem to grow tighter, suffocating with the implications of what's happening. The phone rings again, breaking the tension. Grant picks it up before Melanie can get to it. Hello? It's Darren. His voice comes through, dry and detached. Grant, I filed the notice of intent to sell. Just so you know, it's all legal now. What the hell? Grant snaps, his voice cracking. You did what? Quieted the storm before it got worse, Darren says flatly. I've done everything by the book. Notified you all legally. Consider it a warning shot. Grant's chest tightens, his mind racing. He opens his mouth, but the words don't come out. He looks to Melanie, who's now gripping the edge of the counter, her knuckles white. Neither of them says anything for a long, charged moment. Darren's voice cuts through the silence again. The house is Martha's. The taxes are overdue. Your family's been living under the illusion that it's theirs, but it's not. And if she chooses, she can sell it. Or she can keep playing the game, watching you all scramble. You think she doesn't know this? A sharp breath catches in Grant's throat. No, this isn't happening. Cassie steps forward, her voice quiet but steady. Grandma, are you really doing this? The question hovers in the space between them, and the entire room holds its breath. On the other end, Martha's voice is a soft echo, but the steel in it is unmistakable. I'm really done pretending I don't matter, Cassie. I've done enough pretending. The phone clicks. The line is dead. For a second, the house holds its breath with them. Cassie stands frozen, unable to move, her heart pounding in her chest. The room feels like it's about to collapse around her. The truth of the situation so far beyond anything they expected, that it leaves her gasping for air. Melanie pulls away from the counter, her fingers trembling. I need to start looking for emergency loans. We can't afford this. Not after all these years. Not with everything hanging in the balance. Cassie can barely hear her over the thudding in her ears, but her mind is already reeling, her thoughts scattered like debris in the wake of a storm. The house that had always been home, no longer feels like it belongs to them. It belongs to someone else now, someone who holds all the power. And they're all scrambling to find a way out. Cassie sits at the kitchen table, the envelope in her hands trembling slightly, as if it holds a secret too heavy for her to bear. The edges are crisp, the weight of it unexpectedly solid against her fingertips. The typeface on the front is familiar, Linton Family Trust. Her pulse quickens, though she doesn't quite know why. She's never had to deal with things like this before. Never had to even think about what it means to inherit or hold on to something with this much gravity. The house feels like it's closing in on her, the walls pressing in as her family swirls around her, each of them trying to regain some semblance of control in the wake of Martha's latest move. Melanie's voice rises in the background, demanding to know who they could call for a loan. Darren's words from earlier still echo in her mind. She owns what they abused. The truth is settling in, filling the space around her like smoke. She tears open the envelope, slow and deliberate, her breath catching as the paper inside seems to gleam with something more than just ink. The trust document is thick, its contents carefully typed, each page a promise and a burden all at once. Her eyes race over the lines, but one sentence catches her breath. Cassie Linton is hereby named the future executor of the Linton Family Foundation, effective upon the death of Martha Linton. Her hands freeze. The words blur for a second before coming back into focus. She flips to the next page, her fingers almost numb as they graze the parchment. She's named. She's it, the executor. And with that role comes more than just paperwork. She's responsible for the future of the Linton family legacy, a legacy she never asked for. The realization sinks deep into her chest. This is hers to carry now. But what does it even mean? Cassie presses her palm to her forehead, trying to ground herself in a reality that's slipping through her fingers. She doesn't know what she's supposed to do with this power. She never asked for it, and frankly, it terrifies her. The faint sound of footsteps draws her attention, and she glances up to see Darren standing at the doorframe. He doesn't enter, just leans against the wall, his eyes scanning her face with a quiet, knowing look. "You're the one now," he says simply, his voice cold but with an odd hint of recognition in it. Cassie doesn't respond right away. She's still caught in the weight of what she's holding. The document feels too light for everything it promises, but she knows that what's inside will pull her into a storm she can't avoid. "They were always going to leave this to you," Darren continues, stepping forward but keeping his distance. "They just didn't think you'd actually care enough to make it count." Her breath hitches. What's that supposed to mean? Darren shrugs, his expression unreadable, but there's something in his eyes that tells her he knows more than he's letting on. "Martha has her ways," he says, "and she always knew who would be left standing. She owns what they abused. She'll make sure you know how to use it when the time comes." Cassie's head spins. She doesn't want to understand this, doesn't want to see her future laid out so plainly. But Darren's words echo through her thoughts, sharp and clear. She owns what they abused. There's a sickening realization settling into her gut. Her family has been living off Martha's sacrifices, her donations, her hard work, and all the while, they've claimed credit. Melanie, in PTA speeches, had taken full ownership of the work, the giving, but it wasn't hers to claim. It never was. Cassie feels the weight of the trust settling heavily on her shoulders, pulling her deeper into a tangled web she doesn't know how to escape. She wasn't supposed to be here. This wasn't her fight, but it's hers now. As if reading her thoughts, Darren adds, "You'll get more than just a signature. This is recognition. You're the one who'll decide what happens next." Cassie's heart pounds in her chest. Recognition, what does that even mean? Her fingers trace the edges of the document as if it might slip from her grasp. This isn't a gift. It isn't an honor. It's an obligation. A legacy that carries with it the weight of a family's sins, their greed, their selfishness. Melanie's voice calls out from the other room, her tone rising in frustration, but it feels distant. Cassie can barely hear her over the thrum of her heartbeat in her ears. She stands up suddenly, the document still clutched tightly in her hand, and walks to the window. Outside, the world moves without her. The sun climbs higher in the sky, indifferent to the storm brewing within the walls of this house. "They're going to call this revenge," Cassie whispers, to no one in particular. The words hang in the air, too sharp, too full of meaning. Darren is silent for a long time, and when he finally speaks, it's with a weight that settles over them both. Revenge or not, it's what she's left for you. All the mess, all the secrets, all the things they've been pretending they've done for the last decade. He steps closer, his gaze fixed on her. You're going to fix it. You're going to clean up their mess, Cassie. And when you do, you'll realize something. Cassie turns to face him, the weight of everything pressing down on her chest. What? Darren's eyes narrow, his lips curling into something like a smirk. You'll see that everything they thought was theirs, it was never theirs to begin with. The silence stretches, and for the first time, Cassie feels the power settle over her. It's not a gift. It's a curse, but it's hers, whether she wants it or not. And Martha, her grandmother, knew it all along. The afternoon light spills through the windows, casting long shadows across the sleek glass table in the conference room. Grant's fingers tap nervously on the side of his coffee cup, the rim chipped in places from years of use. He's trying to focus on the documents in front of him, but his thoughts keep spiraling back to the call he received earlier that morning. A call that sent the ground beneath him trembling, cracking apart the world he thought he understood. Martha had pulled the strings. Her vote, her capital, her presence. It had been the invisible hand propping up the company, keeping it afloat through storms, but also through the quiet, less spoken about deals. It was her name that had given them access to clients, to investors. And now it was her name that would erase everything. Grant shifts in his seat, his palms damp against the cool wood of the table. He remembers the way his pulse quickened when Martha's face appeared in the video conference earlier, calm and unyielding. She didn't say a word, not directly, but when the vote was called, she knew what would happen next. The meeting had been brief, too brief, but Martha's majority stake in the company had already sealed the deal. Two silent partners, men who had never questioned her, never doubted her vision, voted in lockstep with her. The motion was simple but brutal. Grant is removed as managing director. The words still echo in his mind, their weight a heavy stone sinking deep into his chest. He'd built this company piece by piece, over years of sweat and ambition, only to watch it slip through his fingers like sand. Reduced to contractor status, a cog in the wheel, a small part of something he used to control, but now barely a shadow of what it once was. The realization tastes bitter on his tongue. He hadn't seen this coming, not like this, not with Martha standing behind the vote, pulling the strings. He thought he could handle the day-to-day. Thought he could hold on to control long enough for Melanie to believe in the dream they had built together. He was wrong. There's a faint knock on the door before it opens, and Melanie steps into the room. Her face is drawn tight, her eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. She carries herself like someone who's been holding back a storm for too long. "You don't look good," Grant says, his voice hoarse. Melanie doesn't respond immediately. She closes the door behind her with deliberate slowness, then leans against the wall, crossing her arms over her chest. Her lips tighten as she stares at the floor for a long beat before she lifts her gaze. "I know what you're going to say," Grant mutters, his gaze flickering toward the phone on the table. "It's over. They voted me out. And He doesn't finish the sentence. What's left to say? Melanie shakes her head, the anger in her eyes sharp enough to cut. "It's not just that," she says quietly, her voice trembling with barely restrained fury. "It's the way they did it." She pulls her phone from her pocket and taps it open, scrolling for a moment before showing him the screen. His eyes flicker over the text thread, the flood of messages pinging across the screen. An employee, one of the lower-level workers Grant had once mentored, had messaged the entire staff. "Just heard. Martha's calling the shots now. Grant's been kicked down to contractor status. She's taking over completely. No one's surprised, right?" Grant's stomach drops. They know. Melanie's voice rises, sharp and biting. How does she do it? How does she make it look so easy, like she's just erasing everything? Like it doesn't matter what we built? That's the problem, Grant. It's not just the business. It's everything. Grant leans back, staring at the ceiling, the weight of everything pressing on him. "I don't know," he admits, his voice low. "I never thought she'd do this. Not to me." "Not to you?" Melanie's laugh is bitter, hollow. She's pacing now, agitation spilling out of her. "Grant, she never cared about you. She's always seen you as a tool to keep the machine running. But now," she gestures to the space around them, the sterile conference room, the silence that hangs heavy in the air. Now you're just disposable. Her words hit harder than he expects. He knew it on some level, of course. He'd seen the way Martha always moved behind the scenes, how she made decisions that affected everyone, but no one questioned her. She was untouchable. But this is different. It's personal. She's not even here, Melanie says, her voice cracking as she turns to face him. She doesn't have to be. She doesn't have to say a word. Grant can feel the blood rushing to his head, his pulse pounding in his ears. How does she do it? How has Martha always done it, time and again, with such ruthless precision? I've tried to be a part of this, Grant mutters, the words slipping out before he can stop them. I've tried to make her proud, tried to play by her rules, but it's never enough. Melanie steps closer, her voice low now. It was never about making her proud. It was about making her feel needed, making her feel like she still mattered. Grant looks at her, his eyes wide. She's right. He's been chasing something that never existed, an illusion of respect, of legacy. Martha never cared about him the way he thought. She cared about control. The silence that follows is deafening. Neither of them moves for a long time. The weight of the truth, of everything that's falling apart around them, feels suffocating. Finally, Melanie breaks the silence. What are we going to do now, she asks, her voice small, unsure. Grant stands up, the words rising within him before he even realizes it. We fight, we get it back, we take it back from her, from them. But deep down, he knows it's not going to be that simple, because Martha isn't done yet, not by a long shot, and they're running out of time. The soft glow of the kitchen lights flickers in the early evening, casting long shadows across the room. Melanie is at the counter, scrolling through her phone, her face twisted into something between frustration and disbelief. Her thumb swipes relentlessly over the screen, pausing on a post she's just crafted. Her fingers hesitate for a moment before she taps send, releasing the words into the world. A passive-aggressive meme, one that laces a sharp edge of sarcasm under the guise of a well-meaning message. The image is a vintage photo of an older couple, smiling with hands clasped in front of a glossy backdrop. The caption reads, "When you're busy sabotaging your family to feel powerful, but forget that the world moves on without you." Melanie stares at it for a moment longer than she should, the words reverberating in her mind. Toxic elders. It's pointed, and everyone who knows the family will understand exactly who it's about. She waits, watching as the likes begin to trickle in. Comments flood underneath. Preach! Tell it, girl, a small army of her friends, her peers, all offering their validation. But something feels off. The satisfaction she should be feeling isn't there. Instead, it's a gnawing discomfort that presses at her chest, reminding her of everything that's been happening. The walls are closing in, and yet she keeps scrolling, unable to stop the flood of emotions that come with each like. It's June who breaks the silence, the chirp of a message notification on her phone. She doesn't need to check it to know who it's from. She knows who's watching. June's reply is swift. "You want me to respond?" Melanie stares at the screen, her stomach dropping. She feels her breath catch in her throat, her fingers going numb for a second. June, the unshakable friend, the one who's always loyal, always there. And yet now, she's a messenger for Martha. The message hangs in the air. Melanie's phone buzzes again with a new text. The words hit with a quiet, venomous calmness. "No, let her speak. I'll write the history. Martha." Melanie's chest tightens. The post was never for her benefit. It was for Martha's. To see how far her reach extends. How much control she still has. It's always been about control. She places the phone down, the silence between her and the kitchen wall feeling thick, as if everything inside her has just stopped moving. The connection with June was already fragile, and now it's clear. June's loyalty to Martha trumps whatever fragile alliance she and Melanie had. Melanie doesn't need a reminder that she's never been fully in control. Let her speak. "I'll write the history." The words loop inside her head, digging in deeper, and the sting of realization settles. Her phone rings again, and this time, it's not June. It's one of the nonprofit leaders. Someone she's been working with for years. Someone she thought she could count on. Melanie, the voice says. Cool and unyielding. I just wanted to let you know, we've decided to rescind your invitation to the upcoming gala. Melanie's heart skips a beat. The words hang there, and she's momentarily stunned, unable to comprehend the finality of it. She opens her mouth, but no words come out. The distance, the coldness in the voice. It feels like ice water dumped over her. She's losing her place in the very world she'd so carefully carved out for herself. They've given the invitation to Cassie, the voice adds, as if to punctuate her downfall. The line goes silent before the final words come in a whisper. We all know about the tensions within your family. It's better for everyone if we just make this quiet. The call ends with a finality that rings louder than any words spoken. She stares at her phone for a long moment, frozen in disbelief, her mind trying to process what just happened. The world she'd fought for is slipping from her grasp, her allies, her friends, scattering as if she no longer fits the narrative they've chosen to follow. In the background, Cassie sits on the couch, watching the flicker of the television screen, her gaze distant, lost in thought. She knows what this means. She knows what's happening. The family is fractured, and she's left to pick up the pieces. But as much as it feels like everything is falling apart, there's something in Cassie's eyes that reflects an eerie sense of calm. She knows something the others don't. She's always known. Melanie's voice is hoarse as she speaks, breaking the silence in the room. They're shutting me out. They're leaving me behind, Cassie. This isn't just business anymore. It's personal. Cassie's gaze doesn't falter from the screen. She takes a slow breath, and then, almost without emotion, she responds. It's always been personal. And just like that, the room shifts. What had been a house divided is now a battlefield. Martha's reach has always been vast, but now she's securing a new line of defense, a donor-advised fund, under Cassie's name. The foundation will be hers to control. With a single stroke of the pen, Martha solidifies her hold on everything. Her words, her power, etched into the foundation of something that was meant to be theirs. And no one knows it yet, but the rules have changed. Cassie stands, her fingers tracing the rim of the glass in her hand, her face unreadable, yet something about her posture betrays the quiet storm brewing beneath the surface. Her voice, when she speaks, is soft but certain. I'll write the history, too. The letter sits in front of Grant, untouched, a cold, sterile reminder of how little control they now have. He stares at it, the weight of it pressing against his chest. The thick official paper is stark, impersonal, and it smells faintly of ink and bureaucracy. The words on the page are written clearly, almost too clearly. Eviction notice. 30 days to vacate. It's the final blow. The house, the home that had anchored his family for years, is being stripped away. He doesn't need to read the rest. The signature at the bottom is enough. Martha's. The words blur for a second as he traces them with his finger, the finality of it sinking in deeper with each passing moment. There's no room for appeal, no space for negotiation, just 30 days. He feels the weight of Melanie's gaze on him, her breath shallow as she stands by his side, unable to voice the question she's surely asking herself. How did they get here? How did this happen? For a moment, neither of them speaks. The silence in the room is oppressive, broken only by the sound of Grant's heavy exhale. His fingers brush over the envelope again, but he's not looking at it anymore. His mind is spinning with all the things they've lost, the years of trust and hope that are now gone. The emptiness of the house seems to expand with every thought, every realization of what this truly means. Melanie can't stand it any longer. Her voice cracks as she speaks. We can't just let her do this to us. She can't just take everything. Grant opens his mouth to respond, but the words feel like they're stuck in his throat. What is there to say? They've been living in a lie for so long, telling themselves that they still had something to fight for, that they could still hold on to some part of the life they built. But now that lie has been shattered. He glances at Melanie, but her eyes are already fixed on the paperwork, her hands trembling as she tries to make sense of the lines that blur into nothing. It's all been signed, sealed, and delivered. The knock at the door is soft but firm. A man, wearing a suit and carrying a briefcase, steps into the room. There's no emotion on his face, no apology for what's about to happen. He's here to do his job, and his job today is to remove them from the only home they've ever known. I'm afraid we'll have to start moving your belongings out immediately, the man says, his tone clinical. The property is scheduled for sale after the 30-day period. Grant doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. The weight of the situation settles like a heavy blanket, smothering any protest before it can take root. Melanie opens her mouth, her hands shaking as she clutches the papers. This isn't right, she protests. We've been here for years. This house… The man holds up a hand, cutting her off without a second thought. I'm sorry, ma'am. This is a legal matter. You've been served. You need to vacate. Grant steps forward, his voice low but firm. I don't suppose there's any chance of reversing this, is there? The man shakes his head, eyes flickering to the deputy standing outside. The weight of the situation is now fully tangible. The deputy, standing at attention, doesn't even flinch. Melanie's voice cracks. We don't have anywhere to go. The words spill out of her like an admission, as if the reality of it has just hit her fully. But the man, professional and impassive, simply nods. I understand, but I'm afraid there's nothing I can do. And with that, the decision is made. It's over. Grant looks at the man, then at the house, one last time. He feels a pang in his chest, a sharp ache as he takes in the fading familiarity of everything. But when he looks back at Melanie, there's a quiet resolve in her eyes. There's no turning back. As the man steps out, Melanie gathers the papers, her hands still trembling. I'm going to call a lawyer, she mutters, but even she knows it won't make a difference. They've lost. The house is slipping away from them, and nothing will bring it back, but in the distance, Martha is already moving forward. The house stands still, but the air inside is thick with the weight of what's coming. Melanie's knuckles press against the doorframe, her fingers tight, like she's holding herself in place. She stares at the door in front of her, her pulse quickening. It's a door she's knocked on 1,000 times, but this time, the silence that follows feels different. There's no greeting this time, no warmth. Her hand trembles as she lifts it, knocking once, twice. The sound echoes through the empty house like a hollow promise. She waits, but when the door finally creaks open, it isn't the confrontation she was expecting. It's Martha, calm, collected. The woman who's always held the power, always held the strings. Melanie, she says, voice soft but unwavering. You've said enough. Melanie's breath catches in her throat. The words are so simple, so final, and yet they carry all the weight of everything that's been unsaid between them for years. She wants to argue, to plead with her, but the words fall flat before they can even form. She wants to say everything about the house, the years of resentment, the betrayal, but nothing seems like it matters anymore. Martha doesn't step aside. She doesn't invite her in. She doesn't need to. Instead, her hand rests gently on the door, a subtle gesture that feels more like a dismissal than an invitation. The door is closing now, Martha says, her voice final. And with that, the door clicks shut, the soft sound reverberating through Melanie's chest, deeper than the finality of any words ever could. The room feels too small now, too suffocating. Melanie stands frozen for a moment, her fingers still lingering in the air, as if she could somehow keep the conversation from ending, keep the last thread of hope intact. But it's too late. The tears that had welled up behind her eyes have nowhere to go. The betrayal is raw, an open wound she can't close. She can't process it, can't absorb it. The finality of Martha's gesture has taken everything from her without ever needing to raise her voice. A bitter laugh escapes her lips, hollow and mirthless. Talk like family, she thinks, the words sharp in her mind. She doesn't even care about that. Melanie stumbles back from the door, her legs shaky. She pulls her phone from her pocket, hands clumsy as she unlocks it. She types, then deletes the words, not knowing what to say, how to voice the anger, the frustration, the hurt. Instead, she opens a new message and types to Grant. This is beneath you. Her thumb hovers over the send button, but her finger never clicks. She knows it's not enough. It feels like it's all been said before, too many times, and the words won't change anything now. Moments later, her phone buzzes. Not from Grant, but from Darren. She opens the message, already knowing what it'll say. No, it's exactly above you. The words cut deeper than anything she's expected. They're not just a dismissal. They're a reminder that she was never in control, never meant to be in control. Darren's words are like salt on the wound. Melanie stares at the screen, her heart sinking, the hopelessness flooding in. She feels the sharp sting of defeat, but it's not just defeat. It's the quiet realization that she has never been able to change the narrative. Across the room, the hum of progress moves on, unnoticed by the world around them. Upstairs, Cassie's footsteps are the only sound. The world is moving forward, but it's not their world anymore. It never was. The truck idles in front of the house, its engine a low hum that vibrates through the floorboards. The movers unload their boxes with the precision of a well-rehearsed routine. Their movements are mechanical, impersonal. The ramp clangs against the pavement, the harsh noise slicing through the otherwise quiet street. Behind them, a sheriff's deputy stands at attention, his posture stiff and neutral, arms crossed, watching the proceedings without flinching. His presence is a reminder of the power in the room, the legal weight behind everything happening today. Melanie stands near the window, her hands gripping the curtain as if the very act of watching could change something, but it doesn't. She watches as her life is loaded into a truck, piece by piece. Furniture, heirlooms, clothes, things that once defined her life here are now nothing more than cargo. "This is wrong," she mutters under her breath, but the words feel weak, hollow. She's said them 1,000 times already, to anyone who would listen, to Grant, to herself. But nothing has changed. Nothing can. Her feet feel like lead as she walks into the living room. She grabs the pile of papers from the coffee table, the eviction notice, the legal documents, and waves them in front of the deputy. "This isn't legal. You can't just take everything." Her voice trembles, but she pushes through the fear. She has to. She has to make them see, make them understand. The deputy glances at the papers for a moment before looking back at her. He doesn't even need to read them. The defeat is in her eyes, the finality in the air. "It's all in the paperwork, ma'am," he says, his voice as flat as the expression on his face. "It's legal." Melanie's breath catches in her throat. She wants to argue, to fight, but the words get lost in the stillness of the room. She knows, deep down, that there's no point. The documents are airtight. Darren made sure of that. Outside, the neighbors begin to appear, one by one, standing silently on their porches, their eyes trained on the scene unfolding in front of them. Some of them look away, pretending not to notice, but the others watch openly, some with curiosity, others with judgment. The quiet town, the quiet life they once had. Nothing is the same anymore. Grant steps outside, the door creaking behind him as he joins Melanie in the doorway. His expression is unreadable, his face drawn tight with the kind of tension that only comes from the knowledge that everything you've worked for is slipping away. He stares out at the truck, at the deputy, at the strangers who are removing their lives from the place they once called home. There's no fight left in him. He steps aside as the movers carry out the last of their belongings, his shoulders sagging under the weight of it all. "This is it, isn't it?" Melanie says, her voice strained. "It's over." Grant doesn't answer. He doesn't need to. The truth is there, plain and clear. Everything that mattered, everything they thought they had, is gone. Meanwhile, Martha is nowhere to be seen. She's not watching, not observing from a distance. She's at the community center, busy with her usual duties, delivering books, attending events. It's clear now that the house, the foundation, the legacy, none of it was ever about her family. It was always about what came next. As the final box is loaded onto the truck, the buyer arrives, a man with tired eyes and a businesslike demeanor. He shakes hands with the deputy, acknowledging the completed transaction. He doesn't seem fazed by the emotion in the air. This is just another property for him, another step in the cycle. The workers begin to install a ramp at the front door. The house, once home to a family's dreams, is now a place for foster children. A new chapter entirely. The transformation is swift, clinical. From the doorway, June's voice rings out, breaking the tension. "Well, that was more fun than bingo," she says, with a grin, her amusement sharp and biting. Melanie's eyes snap to her, but she doesn't respond. She's too tired. There's nothing left to say. And as the last of their belongings disappear into the truck, the house feels even more distant, as if it never truly belonged to them at all. The story has ended, and the only thing left is to watch as the final pieces fall into place. Cassie's eyes linger on the Linton Foundation website, her name now firmly etched into the organization's history. Founder and executive director. It's there, in bold letters, a title she never asked for, but now must wear like a cloak. Her reflection flickers in the screen, but this is not a reflection of who she thought she would become. It feels strange, almost foreign. She had never imagined herself in this role, never thought she would inherit what was left behind. But now, with a few clicks, her name is part of something larger than her, something much bigger than she ever anticipated. The foundation was never meant for her, never meant to be part of the family's narrative. It was meant to belong to those who paved the way, to Grant and Melanie, to her grandmother. But now, Cassie is the one at the helm, and the foundation is hers to define, for better or worse. She scrolls through the various programs they've started: mentorship, education, financial literacy. The initiatives are already gaining traction. The mentorship program for young girls is already fully enrolled, and Cassie's name appears alongside those whose vision shaped this work. She's teaching these girls what she never learned, guiding them through the maze of financial independence, self-worth, and empowerment. It feels like a quiet rebellion. She's using her position to rewrite what the legacy should look like. Not the one built on secrecy, control, and manipulation, but one based on transparency, collaboration, and real, meaningful change. Downstairs, the house feels colder now, emptier than before. The hum of activity is gone. There's a strange kind of silence that fills the void left by Grant and Melanie's absence. The space is no longer a home. Not really. It's a relic. Cassie knows it. She feels it in her bones. They may be gone physically, but the weight of their presence hangs in the air. Across town, Darren stands in the small, quiet office, reviewing the final papers with precision. Martha's new will is neatly filed away. It's done, clean, uncomplicated. And at the center of it, Cassie. She's the one who will carry the torch forward. Grant and Melanie are not even a footnote in the will. There's no space for them. Not in Martha's future, not in the legacy she's built. Darren doesn't linger on the past. He turns the papers over, his task complete. Martha's plan has always been clear, and now it's done. No one left to challenge her, no one who could change the direction she's set. The business, once held under the tight grasp of a singular leader, has now become a cooperative. Decisions will no longer be made from the top down. Cassie leads now, but she is not alone. The people who've worked alongside her grandmother now have a seat at the table. The old ways are gone. That evening, Martha hosts a quiet dinner at the community center. The room is warm with soft candlelight, the flicker of it casting shadows across the faces of old friends. Former students, colleagues, librarians who once worked alongside her. It's a gathering of people who have all seen Martha through the years, through her various transformations, who understand the quiet strength she holds. Cassie stands at the head of the table, a glass of wine in her hand. The quiet clink of glass against crystal catches everyone's attention. Her voice rings out, steady and clear, carrying the weight of everything she's inherited. To the woman who proved she still matters, Cassie says, her eyes briefly meeting Martha's, even when they whispered otherwise. The room falls into a hush. No grand speech, no theatrics, just a simple statement that resonates. Martha raises her glass, the faintest smile tugging at her lips. To the future, she says. The words linger, the weight of them settling over the room like a blanket. Cassie doesn't just toast to the past, she toasts to what comes next. A new chapter, one she will write in her own way. But Martha's shadow still stretches long across it all. And as the night unfolds, Cassie realizes that this is just the beginning. The foundation is hers, but how it grows, how it transforms, will be the real legacy. The courtroom feels cold, sterile. The high ceilings amplify the muted shuffle of feet, the rustle of papers, the hushed conversations among the gathered few. The judge sits with his hands clasped, reading the documents before him with a detached focus. His pen taps against the desk methodically, as if the weight of this moment doesn't quite reach him. Melanie's knee bounces relentlessly under the table, her breath shallow. Every so often she glances at Grant, who sits beside her, stiff and silent. The weight of their loss presses down on them, but there's no escape from the finality that's coming. They had fought so hard to reclaim their place, to carve out some semblance of dignity. But now, here they are. Darren, sitting on the other side of the room, doesn't look at them. He's calm, collected, as though he's seen this all play out before. He has. He's been the architect of it. And now, as the judge's eyes flicker up from the papers, Darren leans back slightly in his chair, a subtle smirk tugging at the corners of his mouth. The judge clears his throat, his voice cutting through the tension in the room. The petitioner, he begins, addressing the case without a hint of emotion, has clearly benefited from the respondent's generosity, not the other way around. Melanie flinches, but she holds herself together. She presses her lips tight, fighting the burning sense of humiliation welling up inside her. Her hands are trembling, the paperwork now a useless relic in her grasp. She'd pored over every detail, looking for a loophole, but there was nothing, not a single thing she could change. The judge's words continue, punctuated by the sound of his pen tapping. As such, the case is dismissed. He looks at them briefly, his eyes briefly narrowing as though his decision is final. And he's already moved on. A cold silence follows. The weight of the moment crushes down on them, and the room feels impossibly small, suffocating. The words have no room for protest. Melanie opens her mouth, but nothing comes out. Her gaze flickers to Grant, but he doesn't look at her. He stares ahead, his face rigid with disbelief. The deputy rises, the papers already in hand, and the movers, who have been waiting, begin packing their things. The sound of footsteps fills the space as the finality of the verdict sets in. Grant stands slowly, the weight of the loss too much to bear. He looks at the empty seats in front of him, trying to absorb it, but it doesn't come. It's too late for that now. Martha, meanwhile, is already gone. She's not in the courtroom. She's not waiting for their reaction. She's elsewhere, securing the future she's already built for herself. The one they couldn't see coming. Darren stands up as well, gathering his briefcase, already satisfied with the result. As he walks past them, he pauses only briefly. His voice is quiet but cutting. It was always above you, Melanie. It was never yours to control. Melanie's heart sinks, her hands shaking. There's no fight left in her, no words that will change anything now. As the courtroom empties, June's voice rings out from the hallway, breaking the silence. Well, that was more fun than bingo, she says, with a quiet chuckle, watching them walk out. Melanie looks at Grant, her eyes filled with exhaustion. It's over. The headline hits Cassie hard. She was the backbone. Now she's the name. It's bold, in big black letters across the front page of the local paper. Her fingers hover over the screen, the weight of the words sinking in. Her reflection catches in the glossy surface of the tablet, a fleeting image of a woman who never expected to see her name in print this way. The photo beneath the headline is of Martha, standing in the library she helped fund, quietly poised, standing in front of the rows of books she's made accessible to generations. Cassie sits beside her, their faces side by side, the bond between them palpable even in the stillness of the photograph. There's no denying it. This is Martha's legacy now. But Cassie knows something else is at play. This, too, will be her chapter. She runs her fingers across the screen, feeling the familiar warmth of the tablet. Her eyes scan the article again, the words underscoring everything she's been feeling for months. The woman who built it all. And now, the woman who will guide its future. The future. It's her future now, and she's here, in this moment, with the foundation finally hers to lead. I knew I could never replace her, Cassie says softly, her voice barely above a whisper, as if she's speaking to herself, or perhaps to the memory of what's been left behind. But I'll build it my way. She pauses, looking at Martha, who sits next to her with an air of quiet pride. This is your chapter now, she adds. The words as much a promise as a realization. She's stepping into the story, but she's still tethered to the woman who has made it all possible. Martha's eyes meet hers, warm but unreadable, like she's seen this moment coming all along. She doesn't say anything, just smiles faintly, as though she's always known Cassie would rise to the challenge. She doesn't need validation, not from anyone. Her legacy is already embedded into the Foundation's framework. Cassie swipes through the rest of the article, the words washing over her. Cassie Linton, now firmly entrenched in her grandmother's world. She wasn't the one to inherit the name out of privilege or expectation. She earned it through determination, through a new path carved out of her own choices, not the ones set for her by family or history. But as Cassie sets the tablet down, her thoughts shift. She opens another app, social media, where she's been more present lately, following the shifts in the family dynamic. Melanie's recent change in name stands out. Melanie Linton, now Melanie Shaw. She'd seen the update last night, late, after the silence had settled in. A small act, but it cuts deep. It's a subtle declaration of distance, of breaking ties, as if shedding the last part of a life that no longer fits. Grant isn't much better off. Cassie had overheard him last week, talking to a former employee about applying for a job at the company he used to run. It wasn't just a job. He was applying under someone who had once worked for him. A twist of fate that didn't escape Cassie's notice. It felt like a humble acceptance, like he had finally given in to the reality of his place in this new world. In the meantime, Martha's reach extends even further. A quiet donation to a scholarship in June's name, a generous $20,000. The sound of the check being written, of the foundation supporting the very community it once exploited, fills the room with a sense of uneasy closure. June, ever loyal, glances at the check with an appreciation that doesn't quite mask the complications beneath it. The room feels heavy with the weight of it all, of past actions bleeding into the present, of destinies fulfilled and broken. Cassie's future is here, but it's not the future she expected. She's left with a legacy to shape, to carry on, but she's learned from those before her. In her hands, the foundation won't just stand on its own. It will evolve, it will change, and it will grow in ways none of them could have ever imagined. And yet, as the weight of responsibility settles over her, Cassie realizes something she hadn't expected. The true test isn't in taking the reins, it's in letting go of the past. And for all the pieces she's inherited, the one thing she can't seem to escape is the echo of those who whispered, who doubted, and who had already moved on. But it's her story now, and she's ready to write it. It's just a matter of how she chooses to end it. Cassie walks into the small conference room, the door clicking shut behind her. The sunlight filters in through the tall windows, casting soft shadows across the walls. She leads Martha to a seat at the round table, where a young girl sits, her hands nervously gripping the edge of her notebook. There's a quiet intensity to her presence. Something about her stands apart from the others, something that draws Cassie's attention in a way no one else has. "This is Jamila," Cassie says, introducing the girl with a warmth she doesn't often allow herself. "She's one of our brightest. Came to us after growing up in shelters. She's been trying to figure out where she belongs, just like we all have." Jamila lifts her head, meeting Martha's gaze with a confidence that's both fragile and fierce. There's a quiet power in the way she sits, as if she knows she's meant for something more. The moment stretches, the weight of it pressing on Cassie's chest. Martha studies the girl for a moment, her sharp eyes softening. Just slightly. She leans forward, placing her hands on the table, her fingers folded like she's about to share a secret. "You've seen things most people wouldn't understand," she says to Jamila, her voice low and steady. "But that doesn't mean you're broken. In fact, it means you've learned how to survive. The question is, what will you do with that?" Jamila shifts in her seat, her eyes flickering from Cassie to Martha. The weight of the question hangs in the air, and for a long moment, it feels like time has stopped. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, Jamila speaks, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want to help others. Show them what it feels like to stand up after everything's knocked you down." Cassie watches the exchange closely, her chest tight with emotion. She's always known that Jamila had potential, but hearing it out loud feels different. It's not just hope, it's a quiet certainty. Jamila will make a difference. Martha's lips curl into a faint, approving smile. She looks at Cassie, then back to the girl in front of her. Dignity isn't something anyone can give you, she says, her voice rich with understanding. It's something you take for yourself. And there are boundaries, of course. You need to protect yourself while you're giving, and you need to know when to step back. Cassie feels her throat tighten as the words hit her, echoing in ways she didn't expect. It's something Martha has always known, but it's something Cassie is only starting to understand, the power of boundaries, of knowing when to give and when to walk away. Martha reaches into her bag, pulling out a manila folder and slides it across the table to Jamila. Start small, but start. Change doesn't happen in one fell swoop. It happens in increments. Find your ground. Build from there. Jamila looks down at the folder, her fingers brushing the edges before she meets Martha's eyes again. She nods slowly, her gaze steady, a quiet resolve settling over her. The room feels different now, charged with a new energy. Jamila has been handed the key to her future, and it's up to her to decide what she'll do with it. As the meeting wraps up, the three of them rise from the table, exchanging a few parting words. Cassie watches Jamila leave, her shoulders slightly straighter, the weight of the world on her back now something she's learned to carry with grace. Outside, June is waiting by the door, her arms crossed, her expression knowing. You became the matriarch the rest couldn't handle, she says. A small smirk tugging at her lips. The words are light, but there's a bite to them that cuts deeper than Cassie expects. Cassie doesn't respond immediately. She's still processing everything: Jamila, the future, the weight of Martha's legacy. But there's something in June's words that resonates. Not yet, Cassie says softly, her voice quieter than usual. But I'm getting there. Later that day, Darren files the final trust amendment. The words irrevocable are stamped in bold across the pages, sealing Cassie's future. This is the moment, the one where the past fades into the background, and the foundation is fully in her hands. The foundation is no longer a family heirloom, it's a legacy, and she will write it in her own way. Martha watches Darren work from the doorway, her expression unreadable. I don't live for revenge, she says quietly, almost to herself. I live for rebalancing. The weight of her words hangs in the room, her gaze steady as she watches Cassie absorb everything that's happened. It's not about vengeance, not about a fight. It's about finding equilibrium, giving what was once taken, and shifting the power back where it belongs. Cassie looks up, meeting Martha's eyes, the weight of the moment settling over her. She doesn't have to say anything. The future is already unfolding. The letter sits on Martha's bookshelf, nestled between worn leather-bound books and old family albums. It has a simple, unassuming envelope, addressed in neat handwriting. The name on the front is hers, but the sender is unfamiliar. It's the kind of letter you put aside and tell yourself you'll open later, and yet, it lingers for longer than anything should. For one day, it stays there, untouched, gathering dust like everything else that no longer holds a claim on her. Martha sits across from it at her kitchen table, the soft hum of the kettle filling the silence. The morning light creeps through the window, brushing over the clutter of the countertop. It's the quiet of the world after the storm has passed. She knows it's there, the letter, that little white envelope that feels so full of potential. A relic of a past that's slowly slipping away. But she doesn't touch it. Instead, she gets up, walking over to the counter, her movements slow and deliberate. The flour dusts the edge of the counter as she measures the ingredients for her pie: apples, cinnamon, butter, sugar. The scent begins to fill the room, a simple, soothing ritual. As the pie bakes in the oven, Martha stands by the window, her hands on the sill, looking out at the community that's become hers. She's done this before, used these small acts to center herself, to pull back from the edges of a world that's always pushing forward. When the pie finishes, golden and fragrant, she picks it up and walks it across town, past the quiet houses and familiar faces, to the community kitchen. It's a simple gesture, one that feels right in its simplicity. No fanfare, no speeches, just a woman, a pie, and a place where people come to eat and talk. There's something beautiful in the understated nature of it, something final. Cassie arrives later, clutching a stack of freshly printed pamphlets in her hands. The ink is still faintly warm, the edges crisp and new. She walks into the kitchen, her steps light but purposeful. She spots Martha sitting by the window, a faint smile on her lips as she sips her tea. The room is warm, the scent of baked goods lingering in the air. "Here," Cassie says, holding out the pamphlets for her club. "I thought you'd like to see them." Martha looks up, taking the stack in her hands, her fingers grazing over the crisp paper. She flips through the pages slowly, taking in the words Cassie has written. The program that's unfolding under her direction. The future is alive here, in this small space, in the stories that are being written by young hands. "This is a good start," Martha says softly, her voice steady but filled with a quiet pride. There's something in her gaze that Cassie recognizes now. A deep understanding, a kind of quiet acknowledgement. They sit in silence for a while, looking out the window together. 2 generations, no apologies. Cassie feels the weight of it, the vastness of the life she's been handed. She's never felt more certain about what she's meant to do, but also more uncertain about the way it will unfold. Just then, Cassie's phone buzzes on the table. She picks it up, reading the message with a mixture of exhaustion and relief. Darren's name flashes on the screen. "Final documents processed." The words hit like a quiet drumbeat. Everything is sealed. Everything is in place. The finality of it washes over her, but it doesn't feel like an end. It's a turning point. It's the moment that the future, the legacy, moves forward. Cassie glances at Martha, who's still sipping her tea. There's no need to speak. Martha knows. They both do. The letter, the one that stayed sealed, is nothing more than a footnote now. A single moment in a much larger story. A story that Cassie will continue to write, one choice at a time. The pie, the kitchen, the pamphlets, these are her pieces to place, her way to reshape what's been given. And for the first time, she understands that the real work isn't in the documents, the signatures, or the programs. It's in the quiet moments, the ones that no one else sees, where everything starts to shift. Martha sets down her cup and looks at Cassie. "It's your turn now," she says, not as a command, but as a simple truth. And for the first time, Cassie feels ready. Martha enters the co-op quietly, as she's done 100 times before, but this time, there's a different feel to her steps. The workers, those who remain from the days when she still held the reins and those who have come in since, nod as she walks by. Their expressions laced with respect, acknowledgement. It's not the kind of attention that demands attention, but the kind that you can feel in the air, thick with unspoken recognition. Her eyes scan the familiar, yet now subtly different space. The once sterile walls are lined with new art, new energy. The shelves have been rearranged, the organization more fluid, more communal. But there is still a trace of what came before, a trace of her. She walks past the new sign, and her fingers reach out, brushing gently across the cold metal letters. They are solid, steady, firm in a way that resonates with her. It's a small action, but it feels like a quiet confirmation of what's been accomplished, of what remains untold and uncelebrated. The metal gleams in the soft light. Her touch lingers for a second longer than expected, as if she's absorbing the weight of it, the impact of her presence. She walks toward the back, where a wall features the original business charter, yellowed and worn with age, framed beside her own portrait, quietly placed as a part of the history now shifting. The portrait doesn't have the grandeur it once might have had in another time. There's no pomp, no gilded frame. It's a simple black and white photograph, just a quiet moment captured of Martha standing outside the building, arms crossed, eyes sharp with purpose. The woman who started it all, standing now beside the document that made it happen. She stops in front of it for a moment. Her eyes don't linger for too long, but there's a softness there, a glint of pride behind the calm exterior. She doesn't need to say it. The truth is already etched into the foundation of the co-op. A child's laugh breaks through the silence, bright and unburdened. Martha turns toward the sound, a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. A small child is playing in the waiting area, tossing blocks and laughing to himself. The next generation, untouched by the struggles of the past, free to grow and build. This is why it matters. The child's carefree laughter is a reminder of what she's been working for, what she's been creating, even when no one noticed. June steps beside her, leaning against the counter with a knowing smile. She glances at the child playing and then back at Martha. Told you, she says with a smirk. Never underestimate a woman with paperwork. Martha's lips curl into a smile at the comment. No one ever did, she replies softly, a quiet pride in her voice. They just didn't want to believe. Cassie enters from behind, holding a clipboard with papers neatly stacked. She pauses at the door, her gaze immediately falling to Martha. There's something in her expression, a weight, but one softened by time. She steps forward, her voice steady. You taught me not to wait for someone to say I matter, she says, her words quiet but firm. Martha turns to her, her gaze steady, and Cassie can see the years of wisdom in her eyes. It's a rare thing to see Martha so at peace. Cassie, too, has made her peace with her role now, one that is both inherited and earned. Together they stand in the co-op, the quiet legacy of the past unfolding, now alive in the hands of the next generation. As they move through the space, the hum of the day, the sounds of conversations and small tasks being completed, fill the air. This place, once a foundation of a single woman's dream, is now a living, breathing testament to what Martha had always known. Nothing stays still. Nothing is static. You either grow or you wither. Later that night, Cassie sits at the dinner table with her family, her hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea. The conversation is light, the kind that always follows Martha's calm presence. Her son, now in his early 30s, leans back in his chair with a grin, chuckling softly. At dinner, my daughter-in-law whispered. She still thinks she matters, Cassie says, with a flicker of amusement in her eyes. And my son laughed with her. A pause. Her son, still with that easy laugh, grows quiet. He changed his mind when my lawyer explained who actually did. The words settle between them like the silence that follows a storm. Cassie, a quiet satisfaction filling her chest, watches as the truth lands, neither with malice nor arrogance, but with a steadiness that only those who've seen it all can understand. This is Martha's legacy. This is Cassie's story, and it's one that will not be whispered away.